Wine from down under. Maybe if they were swimming in it, they'd beat us. Cowbell.
I'm Greg.
I'm Julie, and we're the Crafty Winers.
She says that because the swimming finals just got done in the Olympics.
And they really hate our cowbell that we always enter with.
They made it very clear. I kind of hate it too, so.
I think it's cute.
So we are making Shiraz. This particular Shiraz is an Australian Shiraz. I had a hard time finding concentrate. So it's in a kit, and we basically threw all the other stuff from the kit into our kit accessories bin that we will use if we run out of all of our normal stuff someday, maybe. This is a wild grapes.
Oh, I didn't write that down. Wild grapes.
Wild grapes is the brand. This came from Amazon. I will link it in the description below. This Shiraz Australia is enough to make 6 gallons of finished Shiraz, but it's a lot less in concentrate form. So I already did the math.
Oh, corgis have something to say. They're saying
something, Nori.
They're saying, wait, I have to give my fun facts about Shiraz.
Oh, that's what she's saying.
Yep. Which I've got over here. So, Shiraz is one of the most widely planted grape varieties in the world, and I did not know that, because it's very hardy and it can grow in a whole lot of different climates.
Wonder if I can grow here.
Probably. Well, Australia's kind of dry, right? Southern Idaho's dry.
We have to try it.
Yeah. Australia is the second largest producer of Shiraz because France comes in above them. Slightly, just slightly. The name Shiraz is actually, it says Shiraz here on this because it came from Australia. The name Shiraz is used almost exclusively in Australia. Other parts of the world, it's known as Shiraz, which is, that's its French name. See, she agrees with me. Yep. She says yep. And Syrah means princess in Arabic. That is a fun fact because of the next one. Shiraz is the name of a city in Iran, but the Rhone region of France is known as the home of Syrah. So, but some people claim that the grapes were brought over from Persia to France, but nobody knows for sure.
Because they were first at everything.
What the heck? She's very vocal.
That's Pippin trying to quiet Nori down, I believe. Trying to be the police dog.
So, Shiraz is widely considered one of the healthiest wine varieties. So, that's a good thing. It's
that's the only reason we drink Shiraz.
It gets worse, though. This is a good part. Its high dose of antioxidants is believed to help with stress, weight loss, and prevent heart disease. Here's the bummer part of it. When consumed in moderation.
Well, that all goes out the window.
It takes between 600 and 800 grapes to produce a single bottle of Shiraz.
I'm glad that we have this.
Yeah, me too. That'd be a lot of pressing with our feet out in the backyard. Vines, so in Australia, they have vines dating all the way back to the 1800s. So they have the world's oldest Shiraz vines still producing product. And that concludes my informative segment with corgi barking in between.
They may not be able to hear the corgi barking because of our noise cancellation. Let's hope. So I've already done the math. This is 1.59 US gallons. I'll do the math again. 1.59 US gallons of concentrate. 1.59 times 128. It's 203.5 ounces divided by 6 because it makes 6 gallons. Means that we want 34 ounces of concentrate in our pitcher. And these lids are always a little tricky to get off without splashing concentrate all over myself. But I did it, so.
Good job.
Okay, that is 34. I'm going to get the some of the air out of this so that my juice hopefully stays good a little bit longer.
I think I'm going to have to give the dogs a treat.
It teaches them to not do that, doesn't it?
What do you want? What do you want? Be a good girl.
Hint. Barking during filming is not being a good girl.
No, get down. Get down. Oh my gosh. It's just being... Nori?
Who fell into the well, Nori?
Timmy? Jimmy?
Just leave them. Okay, so now we need to fill this up with water to the 96 ounce mark. And I'm going to use my pumpkin gutter utensil to stir it up real good. Foam will be an issue with this if I get carried away. So I probably already did get carried away, but we'll hope I can get around it. So now we are going to get a specific gravity,
Which I'm going to write down on our batch note.
If you haven't watched our video on specific gravity and you need to know about specific gravities, I'll link it above. Everything has been sanitized, and I will also link that video above on how to accomplish that and why. Okay, so the specific gravity when this is only 3/4 full, so it doesn't have all the water that we're going to be adding to it yet, is 1.118. We want this to be probably, 14%, I think is what Alexa says, and we've liked that percentage before, so...
So I'm going to use our tool on craftywineries.com/tools to figure out if we need to add sugar and how much. So I'm going to put in the specific gravity of 1.118. We want 14%, correct?
Correct.
And
it's 75% full.
is at 75%.
So changing that on our tool to 75% full tells it that we still have 1/4 water to add to it. So it's going to calculate what the gravity will be when that water is added. This allows us to have this much room to add sugar so that we're not going to end up throwing out any wine later.
And the amount of sugar that we're going to add is 6.6 ounces.
Okay. 6.6 ounces of sugar, which is not really very much in the scheme of things. That will all hopefully be turned into alcohol. I put what was in the graduated cylinder into our measuring cup so she can use that to mix with.
So I added 1/2 teaspoon of pectic enzyme, and I'm adding a 1/2 teaspoon also of tannin, which is optional, but Shiraz tends to have a higher tannin level. I'll mix that up and we will add it to that.
Then we will add enough water to get us to 128 ounces.
With more in that one to break open a new one.
This is all Walmart drinking water, purified drinking water. You don't want to use tap water if you could have chemicals like chlorine in it. We don't say that every time we do a making of video, but we should. Hi, corgis.
Yeah, they don't care about that. They just want to bark at other things.
I'm just short of the 128 mark because I know that foam will end up being juice at some point. And I'm going to mix it up again, trying to not splash us with it. The sugar mixes so much easier using this pumpkin gutter than it does if you're trying to use a spoon.
This is the best thing ever. Who knew? Who knew a pumpkin gutter would be so useful for other things?
I'm going to go ahead and take the gravity now so that I don't forget.
And this will be our actual initial gravity.
This is the gravity to start fermentation with the sugar added. The initial gravity is 1.105.
Okay. Which is exactly what our tool says.
How convenient. Now I'm going to do pH.
And I am writing all of these things down on a batch note. It's really important to keep track of what you've done, especially if you're doing as many wines as we do. I can't remember yesterday half the time, so it helps us be able to recreate a wine that we really like or know if we need to make adjustments to one that we didn't like so much.
We just did a pH video, an update of what we were using before, so I'll link it above if I can. I think I can. We are looking at 3.81 pH.
Okay.
So I think we're going to want to add a little potassium bicarbonate to take us up to 4, probably a quarter teaspoon. I calibrated our pH meter just before we started today's filming, so I know that it's accurate. So I'm going to put, it doesn't really matter because it's easy to get it from the pitcher, but put this must into the measuring cup, and she'll put a quarter teaspoon potassium bicarbonate, which will raise the pH, I expect, enough to get us right around 4. She mixed it up real good in the measuring cup, and then I'm going to mix it up again, trying to make sure that it all gets mixed up well, or the pH will end up being misread. pH is 3.92, which I believe is probably close enough to 4, so that we're not having to do another adjustment.
Yeah.
Closer to 4, the better. The pH will drop when it starts fermenting, most likely. And we don't want it to get too low that it causes a problem for the yeast. I'm going to give her some must again, about a quarter cup.
Which I am going to heat up in the microwave, which you can do also. Takes about between 8 and 12 seconds.
From room temperature.
From room temperature. And you can also put it in front of a heater like we do most of the time. It just takes a little longer, so on camera we microwave it, or put it in some place really warm like your hot water heater room.
I am going to clean off the pH meter so that this does not dry on it. So I wash it with tap water, then I'll rinse it with distilled water. Should always do that so that you don't get this stuff going up your meter.
All right, so I heated this up for exactly 12 seconds. And I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of Go Firm, which is optional, but we have really good success with it. I'm going to mix that up, and it does mix up better if it's warm also, so another good reason to get it warm.
While she's doing that, I'm going to transfer our must into not a fermenter we use terribly often, and there is a reason for it. So the reason for the wide mouth fermenter is that we're going to be using a tilt hydrometer today. This hydrometer allows you to log and remotely view what the specific gravity is at any given point. We typically only use these when we're researching a new yeast or a new juice or whatever. In this case, I'm feeling bad that we have 2 of these that we never use. So we're going to use it, by gosh.
We're going to use it, by golly. And then I mixed up all that Go Firm, and I'm going to add a full packet of Walvin 71B. You don't need to use a full packet, but we have quite a lot of it. So I'm going to sprinkle it on top, and then I'm going to dunk it a little bit to get it hydrated. Not stir it, just kind of get it down there in the must. And then this and our must are going to go in front of our little heater and sit for 2 hours while this gets all bubbly and happy. And then we will add that to our fermenter.
With a traditional carboy, we would use a blow-off tube because this is going to probably blow out the top. We're going to use a carboy heater to warm this up to about 77 degrees. The reason why is because our fermenting room is 55 degrees, and that is a little chilly for this yeast and for a red wine. So we use a carboy heater around it. You probably are not going to have to worry about that. But with this much headroom, we don't need a blow-off tube. If you're using a regular carboy, you probably want a blow-off tube. Any of our other videos will show you pictures because I did not bring one out for this one. Basically, it's a tube that comes out of the top from the airlock port and goes into the bucket of sanitizer that we're using today. And that treats it as an airlock, but it allows, if your carboy overruns the top of the carboy, it allows it to escape through the tube and not get all over your counter or wherever your
Yeah.
fermenter is.
But instead, we're going to use a traditional airlock on this one.
At a warm 77 degrees.
What's she found it. She's playing with it. Nope. She's done.
That was fun. At the warm 77 degrees that this is going to ferment at, that temperature in 3 days, I'm going to use our food saver to degas this. If it wasn't that warm, I'd probably wait 5 days to do it. But you can use a spoon. You can rock kind of fairly violently to get some of the CO2 out and get a little oxygen in. That's what the degassing gets the CO2, a lot of the CO2 out. Then I'm going to put a teaspoon of Fermento in. That goes along with the GoFirm. You can alternatively not use the GoFirm and put the Fermento in at the front, but this is the way that we do it, and it seems to make our product more consistent and ferment faster. The third step, so the first step is degas, then Fermento. The last step on that third day is I'm going to use an aeration wand and add oxygen into this for about 3 minutes. So the three of those will make this a nice environment again for the yeast after the really roughest 3 days of their lives, probably.
I have one question.
Yes.
If you rock it violently, is that like Metallica?
Metallica has been known to rock violence.
Is it headbanging?
I just got that picture of long hair and yeah, 80s child. So we will be back after this is done fermenting. We will know that it's done fermenting by the fact that there's no more activity in the airlock. And I take a hydrometer 3 days in a row and it doesn't change. And hopefully it's also down below 1.000 on the hydrometer, although that's not a necessary requirement. So we will see you in a couple of seconds.
Welcome back. It's only been a few seconds for you, but it has been, looks like 10 days for us.
So we took the specific gravity 3 days in a row and it stayed the same at 0.996.
Yep.
So she can use our tool at craftywineries.com/tools, calculate ABV tool, and tell us what the ABV is.
Where I am going to put in the initial gravity, which was 1.105, and the final gravity, which was 0.996. Whoops. I gotta put it in the right field. Which comes out to 14.47.
It's a healthy wine. So I am racking this, which means transferring it from the primary fermenter to this wide mouth gallon jar that it's going to be its home for a while. I already removed the tilt hydrometer. Tilt hydrometers are pretty neat if you want to spend the money for them. They give you a nice chart that shows you the progression of the fermentation stored in the cloud. We have a tilt pie, which allows us to remotely view it even when we're not at home.
We ought to use it more often.
Otherwise, we have to be in the same room with its Bluetooth range. But they're pretty neat. I use them, just not to their potential. And a lot of times they sit in the kitchen on the shelf and don't get used. So I'm going to make it a point to do something with them. We are going to be doing a port video soon. We're building up towards it. And the port, you have to stop at a certain gravity. So the tilt hydrometer will be very handy for that, knowing when you get to that specific gravity. Hopefully it's not going to be in the middle of the night, because fermentation stops for no man. Okay, I tilted it at the end to make sure that I got as much of the wine as I could without getting any of the lees at the bottom, which is the sediment. A lot of the idea of this process is to get the wine off the sediment. I'm going to clean all of this off and we'll go from there. Okay, we've got some room to work with. She is taking a little over a quarter cup probably of this wine. Don't have to call it must anymore.
That is true. And I'm going to use this to mix up all my ingredients. And the reason we take it out ahead of time is because we're going to put this chiasosol in here. And it needs to have about an hour to start working before we put all this other stuff in there. So we want to make sure that it's not in here fighting with the other stuff I'm putting in.
Chitosan and chiasosol work together. The chiasosol will clear out the negative particles and the chitosan will clear out the positive particles, so they can work against each other.
So
Does
there
not
goes.
take very much.
Nope, just 1/8 of a teaspoon.
Then I'm going to stir it up. We are not waiting an hour. We're waiting a whole lot less than that, but you should wait at least an hour if you can. We are filming and storage is expensive to store all the footage, so.
So while he's mixing that, I'm going to go ahead and put the rest of this stuff in here. And that is going to be a full teaspoon of chitosan.
Oxygen is not your friend anymore. It's not a friend of the wine. It will destroy the wine if you get too much oxygen in it, so try to not introduce any bubbling while you're stirring it.
And I've got all the teaspoons out here. 1/4 teaspoon of bentonite, a 1/16 teaspoon of potassium metabisulfite. Doesn't matter how many times I say that, it's still not easy to say. And a 1/2 teaspoon of potassium sorbate.
So I say every time, especially on the red wines, the potassium metabisulfite and the potassium sorbate are optional. They're only really needed to keep the fermentation from going again if you were to back sweeten. It's not necessarily the truth, and I'm going to put out a video that kind of corrects that a little bit. The potassium metabisulfite also introduces sulfur dioxide, which is preservative for the wine. A certain amount of that is required for the wine to be preserved correctly, well into the future at least. Goes along with the acid that is in there, the total acidity. But we'll have a video on that at some point here in the future. It's not a huge priority because for the home winemaker, it's not a huge deal normally, but the potassium metabisulfite does help protect the wine other than just trying to keep it from starting up a new fermentation. But you can still skip it.
The bentonite tends to settle to the bottom, so I try to stir as I pour. It's kind of an art. And I did pretty good.
Good job.
All right.
Bentonite, I think, is the only one I haven't talked about. It is a clarifier. It will help clear this up even more than it is. It's not terrible now. I am going to put this into our fermenting room, which is 55 degrees, with some oak, which we forgot to bring out.
Oh, yes, I know I was forgetting something.
It's going to magically appear here in a second for you. Oak has magically appeared. It's a little over a 1/2 ounce for a gallon. Is what we use for a gallon of wine.
You can use more.
You'll notice that there is not very much bubbling in this, and that's because we've already degassed this. Just want to point out, because I don't point it out on all of our winemaking videos, that you want this to be completely degassed before you bottle it. We have a bottling video that you can watch that goes over the details, but do pay attention to your CO2. You don't want it. You don't want the CO2 in the bottle.
Nope.
The last thing that we're going to do before we put the oak in is check the pH. We want the pH to be 3.8 or less before it's bottled. pH is 3.67.
Good.
So we are good on pH. Do you have any desire to taste this, or do we want to just put the oak in it and taste it later?
Well, we could taste it. I don't see why not.
This is very young. I mean, it doesn't really get younger than this as far as wine is concerned. And unoaked. So we know it's going to get a lot better, but this will give us an idea of the sweetness or lack thereof. Flavor.
It's good. Sometimes we'll raise or lower the pH, still keeping it below 3.8, just for taste. And that's actually something we cover in our pH video that's coming up.
What are we drinking?
This is bourbon barrel, actually.
So it's hard to not compare this with what we're drinking. The tartness, I don't think it's quite as tart. I have to have a little more to know for sure, but I think it's tart enough. Now is the time to adjust the tartness. And the video that she mentioned that it should be uploaded, just barely uploaded to YouTube. It'll be released in a little over a week from the time of this video. Talks about total acidity.
And I actually think this is perfect on that.
Total acidity is the measurement of how acidic the wine tastes. The pH is different. It's a different measurement. The 3 what did I say it was?
6.7.
3.67 is fine for the pH as far as preserving this wine, and it's in the range for a red wine.
Mm-hmm.
We could take the TA. We would never do that on camera because it's so time consuming to do it.
It is.
But if we both agree that the acidity is okay, then we're not even gonna test the TA.
I think it's just spot on for a Shiraz, honestly.
It's actually really comparable to what we're drinking. So I think we both agree it's fine. So we're not going to test the TA.
Just needs some oak and some time.
So this will go into our 55-degree room for
a couple weeks.
3 weeks at the minimum. And then we will bring it out and taste it and see if the oakiness and the incorporation is what we were looking for. If it is, we're going to stick this into our 34-degree refrigerator and cold crash it for 3 days. At the end of that 3 days, we'll rack it again because there'll be sediment down at the bottom. Probably quite a bit of sediment. So we'll rack it again so that this is going to be as clear as it possibly can be before we bottle it. So that's kind of a step that we've been doing more consistently because the clarity of our wine has become more important to us.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes a little embarrassing when you bring out a 2-year-old bottle of wine and at the bottom of the bottle there's some sediment. So
well, honestly, we've bought store-bought wine.
Sure.
We've had sediment at the bottom of it. It's not completely.
It's just nice to have a clear product. So if that's not important, you don't need to do the cold crashing. Especially since we did a 1/4 teaspoon pH adjustment throughout the life of this wine. That's all we did.
Yeah.
We added a 1/4 teaspoon of potassium bicarbonate. So this pH did what it was supposed to do and what every wine you want to do. It pretty much took care of itself.
Yeah.
We got it to 4.0 or really close to 4.0 to start fermentation. It didn't stall. The yeast was happy with that. And then the pH naturally dropped down to 3.67, which is right where we want it to end.
It's great.
So pH was a wonder on this. It was great the way that it should be. Every wine should be that way. So that's it.
Thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. Please let us know how you liked it. Like and subscribe to the video, of course, as always. And leave us comments. Let us know if you did try it and how it turned out. And if you had any suggestions, we'd like to hear all of that stuff. And we will reply to your questions and comments. Until next time, cheers.